This is a video on signs in the heaven, and in particular the moon, and I'll have a future video very soon about the sun and similar signs. But for this video I'm going to focus on the moon, and in particular something that I've heard people bring up recently, and that's people saying that there's more than one full moon now per month. That it'll appear that the moon is full for more than a day today. And the full moon is only supposed to be for one day. And I actually still think that the moon is only full for one day. And I just think that it's something's going on that makes it appear as if it's full for longer than a single day. And this is Isaiah prophecy. This is actually one of the very first things when I started looking into conspiracy. Before I even started going down that conspiracy rabbit hole, one of the first things that I wanted to do was find people who could admit that the sun is brighter than it used to be, and also the moon is brighter than it used to be. And I think that's all that's happening here. The moon has become so bright that the phases of the moon that are nearly full, but not quite full, now they just look full. And that should make sense. If an object is very, very bright, it's going to be hard to tell if it's fully circular or missing a little chunk out of the very edge. It's going to be very hard to tell the difference once that the light source is so bright. So that's what I think is going on with the moon. It's really hard to tell 99% when that thing is blasting in your face so brightly. You're going to have a hard time differentiating between 100% and nearly 100%. So these are just some pictures I took of the moon shining brightly. Looks like the sun in this picture. And this is Isaiah End Times Prophecy. I have a whole playlist on End Times Prophecy. If this interests you, you should go check it out. I'm going to read the prophecy in a second. But another thing about the moon that you may have noticed is that it's so bright that it shines brightly during the daytime. And when I grew up in the 90s, I do remember seeing the moon in the daytime, but I remember it having to be kind of on a slightly cloudy day, so just my memories of noticing the moon out in the daytime also come with clouds in my mind for whatever reason. And I remember it being kind of like whoa, that's interesting, the moon's out during the day. And nowadays, as long as the moon is above the horizon, you'll be able to see it. And I think that's part of this prophecy too, that it's just so bright that even a sliver of a moon, even on a bright day, you can still see a sliver of the moon, which is incredible and not the way that it used to be. But anyways, the reason I'm making this video is I've just heard numerous people point out, hey, have you noticed that there's more than one full moon now a month? And so I slightly disagree. But I agree that it looks like the moon is full for longer than a single day these days. And I think it just has to do with this Isaiah prophecy. It's really bright. If the moon is super bright today, yeah, it's difficult to tell when it's full or not. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days, in the day that the Lord bindeth up the breach of his people, and healeth the stroke of their wound. So I'll talk more about the sun in a future video. But yeah, the moon is way brighter today. I see moon dogs, which is not anything that I ever saw growing up. I never saw, not once growing up, did I see the moon so bright that it's making giant rings in the sky. And nowadays, because they spray so much stuff into the sky, chemtrails are real, weather modification is real. They've been doing it wide scale for over a decade now, and they just tell the plebs that chemtrails are fake. But yeah, they're doing wide scale, earth-wide weather manipulation, and it has to do with this end times prophecy. If they weren't doing this crazy weather modification, I think it'd be even more noticeable that the sun is brighter than it used to be. The seasons would probably be totally out of whack by now, just from because have you guys noticed that they also will spray the moon? Because the moon is a cold light, and I think that the moon does also affect the weather. That's why farmers plant things based off of the moon cycle, because I think that the moon also has to do with the weather. And so they spray nighttime, they spray daytime, they're spraying all the time. My personal opinion is that at this point it's all AI. I think that they plug all this data into a machine, and the AI tells them where they should be spraying on what days to try to keep the weather from going crazy. Because I think if they weren't doing this stuff by now, that the weather would be going insane, because how bright and hot the sun is and how bright and cold the moon is. Have you guys noticed that just weather seems a little bit wackier these days? And I think that that's what a lot of the weather modification is, to try to keep things from getting too crazy. Acts chapter 2 verse 20, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before that great and notable day of the Lord come. People have noticed that blood moons are very, very common these days. NASA posted some weird article about the moon rusting, which is odd. I'm just going to read some more scripture, and that'll be it for this video, and I will have a future video talking about more signs in the heavens. Check out my playlist about end times prophecy, and here's some more scripture. Luke chapter 21 verse 25, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. So when the end comes, the Bible talks about what's going to happen in the sky when the end comes. The sun is going to go dark. The stars are going to stop shining. The moon, the crazy things are going to happen with the moon. In my opinion, it's like what's going on now is that energy is being poured into this earth system, this earth, sun, star system, and it's like it's going to blow. You know, like if a light it starts flickering and then it might blow. And I think that the NWO is going to say that aliens are blocking out the sun, and there's all sorts of pre-programming and people like Bill Gates that talk about blocking out the sun. Sci-fi has talked about blocking out the sun before. I think that they'll say that the aliens are doing it. Anyways, this is turning into a little bit of a ramble, but maybe I'll do a few videos talking about this stuff. It's just, I've talked about it before, so go check out my playlist, but I think that it's always good to talk about this. It still interests me to this day. Joel chapter 2 verse 31, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. Because it's still happening. This is end times prophecy that absolutely has come true in our lifetime. If anybody was alive in the 90s or before, even if you were born in the early 2000s, you might be able to know that the sun is brighter than it used to be, the moon is brighter than it used to be. Another one that people born in the past far enough should also be able to tell that time is not what it used to be. And that is end times prophecy by Jesus Christ. Said that the days will be shortened. Days literally are shorter than they used to be. And I think that's connected too with the sun and the moon and more energy being poured into the system. Things are going faster now. And if God didn't speed this up, no flesh would be saved. I think that we can just see that in the society around us. Stuff is so screwed up today that it's very believable that if God didn't speed up the end times, that literally no flesh would be saved, because things are getting so out of hand. It's becoming like the days of Noah. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And I think that the moon and the sun are showing signs of end times today. God bless everyone.